Building a community of leaders in difficult times. In this 1-hour session, we will provide you with the information on the creation and format of this series, as well as a short demo of a type of exercise we will be using throughout the series. Since we are several people on this Zoom call, and I see that most of us have already muted our microphone, that will help with the sound. If you do have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Robert Paris of Mylan Leadership and Carolyn Samney and I, Ann Purtis, from the Pillars will be your co-hosts today. We wanted to offer a program that would support leaders in these very challenging times. We have created a program that aims to build leadership capabilities by offering an interactive platform where people can openly discuss their fears and anxieties, learn some key leadership concepts based on emerging knowledge of the brain, and work together to create high-performing, agile, and human-focused organizations. Here's Carolyn to lead you through why this is such an important part for leaders.
Good morning, everybody. Glad to be here with you this morning. So as Anne's been saying, we were very proud to bring this program together with Robert from Mylan Leadership. And one of the things that's been ringing very true in everything that we've been experiencing over the last few months is that the spirit of community and the spirit of how people have been coming together has been quite amazing. And in the words of Simon Sinek, who many of you may know, he's been known to say lately, alone is hard and together is better. And we really truly believe these words, as we believe that as we run through something that most of us have not experienced in our lifetimes, the sense of working in collaboratives has been something that's given a lot of people a lot of energy, a lot of feeling of capacity, and being able to actually get through times that are undue and challenging. So that is something that we've built into the program that we are calling Building a Community of Leaders, in that we really truly believe that when you bring people together, you are able to solve problems in a much more rapid way, and you're able to leverage collective wisdom. So that being said, we definitely have this belief that together is better, which is why we decided to come together with Robert and bring the collective wisdom of both the Pillars and Mylan Leadership, so that we can leverage what knowledge Robert has and the knowledge that the Pillars have to bring together a program that we believe will be something that helps leaders as they navigate through these times. Just to give you a little bit about who the Pillars are, our mission has always been to help organizations to become their best selves. We are very dedicated to building human-centric organizations. We truly believe that the organizations of the future are those who are going to be sustainable, human-centric, and agile. So we believe very much in the power of human-centric leadership. And that's part of the reason why also we felt that we blend very nicely with Robert and Mylan Leadership. I'll introduce Robert and let him tell you a little bit about himself and his company.
Well, good morning, everybody. I see some familiar faces and some people that I don't know, but it's a pleasure to be talking to everybody this morning. And thanks, Anne and Carolyn, for that introduction. It's been great working with the two of you. And I think part of the theme of what we're trying to get across in this hour is that the ability to work together in uncertain times, it's incredible. And I've had the pleasure to work with the Pillars over the last couple of months, and we've combined our expertise. We've given ourselves different perspectives, even in putting together this webinar in the series. So it really, really does work. Just a brief introduction. The company is Mylan Leadership International, been in business for 27 years and have worked around the world. We focus on leadership development. We do a lot of coaching and a lot of work in the space of innovation. But we're probably best known the last half dozen years about our work in neuro leadership, or applying emerging knowledge of the brain to leadership. And I think in these uncertain times right now, it's fundamentally important that we understand the brain. We understand the impact of all of this uncertainty and fear and anxiety on the brain. And in this series, we're going to be talking about that, as well as, very importantly, how can you take better control of your brain instead of letting your brain control you. So again, really looking forward to interacting with all of you. And I'm going to pass it back to Carolyn right now, who will go a little bit more into why this particular program.
Thank you, Robert. So as has been noted, the theme that's already been probably recurring is the notion of being able to leverage collective wisdom. One of the things that, as Robert mentioned, even in working together, you notice when you work amongst other people that you really do expand your capacity, your knowledge, and your ability to think outside the box. So we decided to put together a program that would bring people and allow for that leveraging of collective wisdom. And the fact that, again, alone is hard, together is better. When you bring a group of people together who are experiencing similar things, it lessens the burden, so to speak. It allows you to feel like you have more capacity and more energy. We also are looking to build leadership capabilities. So like Robert was mentioning, the whole idea of neuroscience, the brain. We also do a lot of work around human-centric organizations. What does that mean? What does it mean to build an agile organization? What are the capabilities of an agile, adaptable organization? So these are the leadership capabilities we're talking about. We're also talking about behavioral capabilities that are key to not only dealing with what we're experiencing today, but to look at turbulence as an underlying theme of society, of the world. And so that takes us to really, how do you learn to adapt and thrive amidst ongoing change? I mean, unfortunately, I think we'd like to believe that this is something that is going to end and we're going to be done with. And yes, we hope, of course, that it will be done soon. But the reality is volatility and uncertainty is not going away anytime soon in our organizations, in our world. So how do we build capacity for that resiliency, if you will? So those are the 4 parameters on which we built the program, and we weave all of this into how the program will be experienced for all those who participate. So as we look at where we are today, it's caused a lot of thinking. It's caused a lot of, reflection upon where do we go from here? What has this experience taught us? What is it teaching us as we experience it? With anything in life, crisis also brings opportunity. Opportunities that can lead to what we call reinventions. So that's maybe a word you've been hearing lately, a word that maybe has been in your own mindset, asking yourself the question, where do we go from here? What does this mean to me as a human being, to my family, to my society, and to my organization? What do we need to leave behind? What is not serving us anymore? What is going to lead us into the future? But before I go any further, I do want to sort of tap a little bit into maybe where your own headsets are. So I'm going to invite you to please just use the chat to give us a sense or a word or two to help us understand what attracted you to this webinar this morning. What was it about, whether it's the title, the theme, the something? Why were you interested and willing to be here with us this morning? That'll help us understand also how we can point conversations. So I invite you to use the chat and just give us a couple of words, please. So it seems like people are looking for, I think, some opportunities. Sounds like to understand what others possibly are doing or thinking about and what strategies potentially could be helpful and part of a community. So it seems people are looking for maybe some answers or some insights and some thoughts into what others are doing. And Alistair, interested in learning more about the brain and leadership. Thank you. Okay, well, that helps us. Thank you. So when we talk about reinvention, like I was saying earlier, really it's about understanding that this crisis is probably teaching us a lot of things about, like I said, who we are, who our organizations are, and the fact that a lot of things probably were not serving us and need to be rethought. So if you look at it from the opportunity perspective, we are at a place where we need to think about what's next. So this is a saying that I've been very intrigued by and actually very interested in, and I'll let Robert as well contribute here, please. When I read this, for me, it was very meaningful. Sometimes when things are falling apart, they're actually falling into place.
Yes, Carolyn, I'll take it from there.
Yes.
I love that quote as well. I think the tendency in this environment is really to be a little negative and where things are going. As I said, the brain craves certainty, and we're in an era right now of there's a lot of uncertainty that's going on right now. But in essence, this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity to reinvent. And I think all of us have to understand, and I think we all know, that the world has changed forever. And this is exactly the times that leadership is needed. I've been told by many people that leadership is relatively easy in good times, but it's the times of uncertainty and fear and anxiety and even trauma that leaders have to step up to the plate. And so, yes, we have an opportunity to take a look at what leadership is going to look like in the new world, because our world has changed inevitably. We have an opportunity to pause, to reflect, to understand what exactly has happened. So, for example, a lot of us are working at home and will continue to work at home. But from a leadership perspective, what exactly does that mean? Like, because all our organizations, we want to be able to attract and retain the best employees. But how do you do that when a lot of our workforce is working at home? We need new thinking when it comes to that. People who are socially isolated, how do you make them feel part of the team? Which is, again, from a leader's perspective, extremely important. So yes, we have to reinvent. These are unprecedented times, but I think our program takes that into account to say you don't have to be alone. One of the things about leadership is the more that we can share ideas and share perspectives and learn from each other, the better. All of you on the Zoom call, you have experience, and how great it would be to pick all of your heads to, what are ideas? What have I seen? What can I do? And share them with each other, in addition to the hosts from the Pillar and Myelin Leadership International, because we have a lot to say, a lot of experience in leadership development, and I think we can help, along with your collective expertise, to help reinvent. So you don't have to be alone. So with this in mind, what we thought we'd do in this hour is give you a little sliver, if you will, of what this would look like. How exactly would we collaborate? So we're going to give you a little exercise right now that you'll be in breakout rooms in a couple of minutes to meet each other. So you will be invited into a breakout room. Please make sure that there's going to be something on your screen that you accept the invitation, okay, to be in the room. That's really important. So what you're going to be is with 2 or 3 other people, and what we would like you to do is, and you're going to have 15 minutes to do this, is first of all pick a spokesperson, because at the end of that we're going to ask each group just to talk for a few minutes on what exactly was stated. So in the 15 minutes, all of you just take half a minute or minute to introduce yourself, so you get to know each other a little bit. And then what we'd like you to do is share a story about your organization that identifies a moment that you've been most proud of living through during this pandemic. And what would you carry forward? So in other words, when you look back at the last, let's call it 10 weeks or so, what have you observed? What would you be proud of in your organization from a leadership perspective, from anything perspective? And what have you learned that you want to pass on to people in your breakout room? And what would you like to move forward? Okay, so that's really what the exercise is. And by the way, that question will be in the chat room as well when you're in your breakout room. So please keep an eye on the time clock at the top of your screen, and don't forget to unmute your microphone when you're in the breakout room, so of course you can understand each other. Okay, so we're going to go to that exercise now in your breakout room. So again, introduce each other, take a look at the question, answer it, and then at the end of it, there'll be one spokesperson, and each group will have 2 or 3 minutes just to give an overview of your findings. Hi, everybody. So hopefully you enjoyed the last 15 minutes introducing yourself and learning about some other people. And as I said, that's part of this program. It's just a microcosm of a belief that we're kind of going to become a learning community with the ability to learn from each other. So what I'd like right now is from each group to take roughly around 2 minutes, the spokesperson in each group, if you can unmute yourself, and for 2 minutes, just give a highlight of what your group talked about in terms of what you were proud of, what you'd like to see carried over. Okay, so whoever wants to go first, just unmute yourself and please talk.
It's Morale from Group 4.
Okay.
I was gonna just jump in.
Go ahead.
I don't know if I'll be talking for 2 minutes, but I will. But I will give you. I'll happily give you an overview of what we discussed. So I think, you know, as we connect with each other and as we discuss, it's very interesting to see that we all have a lot in common. So obviously we all, every organization went through the same challenges of, you know, having to turn things around, operations, or, you know, for the employees to be working from home, systems from all perspectives. We had to turn it around very quickly. And so it's very nice to see that leadership, in terms of the leaders, they've mainly all of them have stepped up and gotten creative in terms of how to salvage the business, put solutions in place, and continue serving their clients in a creative manner to be able to continue to do business. I think what mainly came up in common was that, you know, all leaders stepped up. You know, we were giving examples of leaders normally not being in, you know, for example, a warehouse or wherever they need to be, but really, ils ont tous mis la main à la pâte. So everybody jumped in there to support wherever help was needed. So more than ever, everybody was centered around one issue and concentrated on really helping getting the company out of it. So it was really about a lot around rallying, stepping up, and you know, it didn't matter what the person's title was or is. It's really just, if it's got to get done, let's all go ahead and get it done to help the organization. With that obviously comes the flexibility, so really demonstrating flexibility, autonomy, and perseverance so that the company can survive. And we spoke about the fact that, you know, some of us had to go through layoffs, you know, and it wasn't something that was easy to do, but it's important to also protect the business. So in terms of numbers, that was something that also had to be done. But I think what we had in common is really leaders stepping up and not mattering what their job used to be, but also just looking at what needs to get done and contributing to it.
Okay, great. Thank you, Morale. And just briefly, how was the experience of sharing that with a few other of your colleagues?
It was great. Actually, it puts things in perspective, right? Because when you're in it, and I mean, I think everybody has been through it, but I can speak to as an HR person, it's been very challenging because all the weight's been on us to take care of people, make sure they're not confused, make sure they're feeling happy and engaged and still wanting to work, you know. So I think it felt really good to share that with fellow leaders who also have gone through the same things. And it just puts things in perspective.
Morale, may I ask also, did you guys talk about what of this, because there's a lot of great things that you all experienced, but what do you hope will stick or will carry forward? And how do you see that? You know, is it something that you're already planning for? So what's the carry forward that you guys kept or talked about?
We didn't get into what we hope would carry forward, but if I volunteer to answer the team, I think, you know, definitely the collaboration, the tight-knit bonds that were formed, trust that was formed amongst leaders. You know, as an example, we spoke about the fact that, you know, in some companies that telecommuting, so working from home did not exist at all because they did not believe in it. And then now all of a sudden it's, it's happening and people are performing. So I think it's just, it's that trust, the collaboration, the change management that came out of it successfully, and those stronger bonds.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks for sharing. That was very useful. So, can I ask the spokesperson from a second team to just step up and take a few minutes and summarize?
This is Danica. I'll go. Our team talked about authentic leadership with empathy, doing humane layoffs. I think a lot of us have gone through layoffs or even had to deliver them, but you can do it with care. One of our participants is in the airline industry, so if you've read any news, you understand that context. Everyone could relate to it, though, and developing collaboration with leaders and teams, leaving the old ways behind, and reinventing work at all levels. So what we're hoping and what we'd like to see is what Jean Vanier described. Leadership is not the top of a pyramid, it's the center of a circle. And that sounds great. However, like what you hope will stick, let's bring people together and be collaborating more. For people who are senior leaders who've spent their whole career getting to the top of that pyramid, it's very destabilizing. And as leadership coaches, consultants, or leaders ourselves, treating that fear and anxiety, and I think that's where some of the understanding of the brain is helpful, and getting people to work better in teams. Morale, if I'm saying your name right, was saying, having a culture where if something needs to get done, it just gets done. If you see something that's broken, speaking up and then acting on that feedback. You might do that with your kids and your family at home, but in some work cultures, that is really different from how they've been working. And I think all of us are energized to find that we've got this community of practitioners, that we're not alone. So that was our takeaway from the discussion. If anybody from my team wants to hop in.
Anybody else from the team? And I think it was interesting, Danica, this whole discussion about culture as well, because as we know, culture is everything, and leaders have quite a role in shaping culture. Did you get in any discussion about that, about the leader's role in shaping culture, particularly in these uncertain times?
Well, I think that's another 15 minutes.
Right.
I think in those discussions we touched on it, absolutely, because it's the culture. We did talk about agile and going from a waterfall traditional corporate structure to a more collaborative one. But just in thin bullet points, it's so necessary.
Okay, and is there anything that you guys said that you would want to take forward? That of everything that you talked about, a couple of practices that you'd like to see instituted?
Supporting clients in a way that's collaborative.
Okay, and could you explain that? What you mean by that?
Well, that wasn't my point. So if the person wants to jump in or chat, you may. But I think all of us are working on getting teams to work better together. Do you have the right people in the right roles? And if you do, are they on the right teams? Or do you have a team of all dominant people? You're not going to get anything done. And then beyond that, are you investing in your people? Mm-hmm. So you say to a manager, now you're a coach. Okay. And then my performance review, you didn't coach very well, but did you teach me? Help me do that. Cause I think there's a lot of people out there kind of broken and hurting. They want to do a good job and they're not empowered or they don't know how to do that. So I think that next step, that's what I mean by collaboration, actually listening. Just because you're the boss, you may not have all the answers. And that's okay.
So, Danica, that was exactly my point. That's what I meant by collaborative, especially between the management level and employees, where the expectations are now that you're a manager, well, you should all of a sudden become a people manager and be able to coach and be able to listen, give constructive feedback and all. And then you have the ones that are struggling because it's just not natural for them, and where they're asking for help, but then the evaluation form is there, and they're evaluating them as not doing necessarily what they're supposed to do as a manager.
Okay, so thank you so much. A lot of richness in both groups. Just here, we talked about humane leadership, collaboration, trust, listening, teamwork, agility, culture. I mean, look at in 15 minutes all the stuff that you've come up with. So good on that. Okay, I think there's one more team left. Can we have the spokesperson feedback your findings?
Yes, it's Kevin from Group 3. We talked initially about how people were able to adapt, organizations were able to adapt, how quickly, especially in light of perhaps people not having the skill set, or in some cases, organizations maybe not being fully prepared for what they were facing. So you have a leadership component in there in terms of the leaders helping and providing direction, but also the people adapting, the staff adapting and dealing with what was thrown at them. We talked about connection and the challenges of staying connected, both with people who were continuing to work and those who were laid off. We talked about the example of a warehouse versus an office. A warehouse where people are together, perhaps more people battling through, fighting through, trying to keep the business running, versus an office with perhaps fewer people, less connection, less visibility. Two very different environments. In the warehouse, where perhaps it brought people closer together, and whereas perhaps in the office environment, it was a little bit more challenging in terms of still that feeling of isolation and remoteness. We talked about learning and seeing that things could be done differently and perhaps more effectively, and provide results, improvements for the future that could be carried forward. As an example, board meetings that were historically done in person now being done via Zoom, and thus savings could be obtained. And in this particular case, it was a nonprofit, so it could be used to better support their community.
Great. And Kevin, with your group, how was the opportunity to take 15 minutes and share your thoughts with a couple of your colleagues?
It was very interesting in that you have two different representations, myself being the for-profit and the other members more geared towards the non-profit side, and yet the challenges and fears, concerns were consistent. There was not much difference in terms of what we were dealing with and how we were dealing with it, and the challenges we faced, and the people issues and such. It was interesting to see that there wasn't much difference in the end.
Yeah, it isn't that fascinating, right? Profit and not for profit, but at the end of the day, we're all in an organization. We're all people. We're all facing the same uncertainties or whatever. So there's a lot of commonality that's there. So thank you very much. I think we've covered all the teams, right? Thank you so much for sharing everything. And very, very interesting. What I'd like to do is turn it over right now to Carolyn. Maybe just Carolyn, so maybe take a couple of minutes. What did you hear from all three groups?
Thank you, Robert. So definitely a string that I was noting is the fact of leadership and how leaders were able to shift mindsets. It sounds like were able to take on roles that they didn't normally personify, were able to quickly adapt. And what's interesting for me is this is something that we've been talking about for years in the form of leadership needing to think differently. We've been in paradigms of leadership that have been old and anchored for a very, very long time. And it's interesting that it took a crisis to get leaders to start thinking about how to help their organizations become agile, how to help their organizations leverage the power of everybody, collective, again, wisdom. Interesting how we spoke about the fact of, leaders stepping up. And I'm curious, I asked myself, why did it take a crisis for leaders to be able to step up? And I guess the wish is that as we move slowly but surely into post, call it pandemic, that leaders understand that they, this quote also I very passionate about, we cannot lead anyone further than we have been ourselves, from Maxwell, who says that basically leadership, the work that has to be done is an internal game. So as we've moved through this, people might have been in crisis mode and reactive mode and having to get things organized. And it sounds like the capacity to organize happened quickly. People had this wherewithal to be able to turn things around and get things organized. So now my question is, are leaders able to step back, reflect, and ask themselves about what that meant for them, what it means for them moving forward, what they want to carry forward, not just in their organizations, but how do we as leaders also become our best selves? How do we continue to develop? So I think that there's a lot of opportunity. Organizations have lived it. Now this question is, how do we sustain? Trust was brought up, the notion of collaboration. In my desire and wish and hope is that those were not temporary things, because I'm truly a big believer that we are in need of a reinvention of leadership. So organizations do rely a lot on leaders. Leaders hold a lot of both, call it formal power and influence. But we also have to understand that leadership, I think you mentioned it, Danica, doesn't just happen in title or in hierarchy. So how do we leverage that? How do organizations take that and create entities that are whole? So for me, I'm hearing that your organizations were able to experience that. So you've had a dose of it. And now really the question is, how do we embed some of these practices in a longer term manner? Because culture was brought up, and culture is really the key, as we know, especially as we move forward. I don't know if you've heard the term VUCA, but basically we are in a VUCA world. Volatility, uncertainty is not going away. So the quicker we can build organizations that allow for collective wisdom, I think the better we're all going to be. So as we're going to sort of wrap it into the end, few minutes here, you basically got to experience a little bit of what it's like when you bring together a group to basically leverage collective wisdom. This is what our organizations have to start thinking about. How do we develop our structures in a way that leverages that? How do we internally even build collaborative learning communities? I think it was mentioned, how do we collectively not just rely on managers? Managers do not hold all answers. Managers, if anything, should be conduits to finding the best answer in the organization. The knowledge of the brain, we've been talking a lot about the fact that we are wired in certain ways, and that is knowledge that we can use effectively to help us as leaders, but also to help lead teams. Human-centric is a term that I've noticed in the last, call it 8 to 12 weeks, all of a sudden showing up all over the place. We now are calling for a return to humanity. And in a way, it's sad that we have to speak about returning to humanity, because that tells me that somehow we've sucked humanity out of our organizations. We've sucked it out of ourselves and our interactions. So here we are now. We're inviting you. This image I'm going to let Robert speak to, as it has a beautiful story behind it.
Well, it is, and thanks for that wrap up. And I heard from all three groups really two themes: the human-centric part in employees and humane layoffs and getting together and teamwork and trust and collaboration, things that we know. And the second theme was a lot of adaptability and agility, things that are part and parcel of this entire organization. And we thought we'd a couple of more slides, but we leave you with this, because when I thought about The Wizard of Oz, it's a movie I think all of us have seen and love. And when you think about the entire story, you have these 4 characters or whatever, each with diverse needs and perspectives, met each other along this path, the yellow brick road, all looking for the answer, looking for this wizard, right? And they went through a journey together, finally got to the Emerald City, only to find out there was no wizard. It was an old man behind a curtain or whatever. There was no big answer. However, they all came up with their own answers in terms of getting a brain, courage, a heart, going home, because they learned from each other. And so we wanted to leave you with this visual and with that thought. That's exactly what our program is all about. It's getting together people with diverse perspectives, with facilitators who have a lot of knowledge about leadership, and share our collective wisdom in an age that is incredibly uncertain, and that we're going to need each other's perspectives to move forward. So Anne, I'll turn it over to you just to summarize the program and to conclude.
Thanks, Robert and Carolyn, for those wonderful words, the debriefing. And I'm always amazed by groups getting together. Really, you are strangers put together in a breakout room, and you're coming up with such richness. And that's what this is all about, that collective wisdom. And even, I'm not sure if you've spent time in introducing yourselves and getting to know yourselves in 2 minutes, but thank you for that. Thank you for being part of this and sharing. So thank you very much. So our web series is a series of 6 90-minute sessions. And these are the themes. So the first one being growing as a leader in difficult times. And again, these are not training sessions. This is very much a collective wisdom. Yes, we may have a model, we might have a lecturette, if you will, of 5-10 minutes, but really the crux of the 90 minutes is exercises, different situations, discussions, etc., and coming out with those reflective sharing and expression of what you've learned throughout this web series. The second one, leading others in a time of crisis. I think it's very apropos now, but I think moving forward, what are we carrying forward? We don't want to go back to that old way. The third one would be shifting my leadership mindset. What do I need to do differently? Not only for myself, my team, and my organization. The next one is the why of leadership. Are we connecting to our values? Did we connect to our values? Maybe, maybe not, but moving forward, we certainly have the opportunity to do so. And how do we do that? The next one is developing as an authentic leader. Becoming who you are, your strengths. And just like the Wizard of Oz, we all have these inner strengths. Authentic leadership, are we living them? Well, here's an opportunity to do so and to learn with others in diverse perspective, diverse organizations. As Kevin mentioned, the for-profit and nonprofit, there was a commonality. The next one is leading an agile organization. We keep hearing about this resilience. It's all over, McKinsey, et cetera, innovation. And what does that mean? Do you need to invent something totally new? Or is it just the small little additions and the adaptability? So this is a 6-part series that will be starting at the beginning of July. And the cohorts will not be more than 10 people. So we really get deeper into the conversation. And we really kept the investment very low because we are giving back as far as helping leaders go towards that new beginning, new normal, whatever we want to call it. So the next cohort, we'll decide what that schedule is. And if you do have any questions at this time, we certainly can answer them. And you can always reach myself or Robert and at thepillars.ca or robert@mylanleadership.com to ask for the document to register. So I'd be curious, are there particular questions at this time regarding this program? And keep in mind that these are made for leaders so that leaders can have such a big definition, but looking at people that you are, that you have a team that you're leading, that you're influencing. So just to keep it into that context. Are there any questions through the, so good questions here. Are they weekly? It can be bi-weekly. The cohort will decide what is best. And typically we've seen every 2 weeks. Time to reflect and start using in between these sessions. What level would be best for, I think at any level of leadership, whether they're a lead, whether they're a manager, a director, I think all types of leaders would benefit from this exercise, from these groups. Looking at, okay, the VUCA. Are there any other questions at this time? We do have a very, very short poll that Carolyn will be posting. We really would appreciate your feedback. It's just 3 short questions regarding what you've heard today, regarding your experience of what you've lived through today. So Carolyn?
It's launched.
Thank you so much for participating. Thank you very much for, as I said, sharing in those groups. And let us know if you are interested in this series, or perhaps people in your organization might have a value in participating in these sessions, especially during these difficult times, working on the self-leadership to then be able to help our teams. If there are no other questions, Robert, Carolyn, parting words?
Yeah, just parting words. It's been great interacting. I can't believe how quickly it's gone, but thank everybody for participating actively. Every time I do these things, I learn from you, and that's part of it as well. So thank you, and hopefully get an opportunity to work with you in the weeks and months ahead. Thanks.
Thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take care.